and welcome to our knowledge transfer series where we try and give you knowledge of the financial services industry and help you get further down your path, whatever that is. Today, we're going to be talking about the retirement roadmap presentation. We created this presentation for AAA of Washington. It was designed to be as informational as possible and no sales pitches. You're going to get opinions from me, but it's not designed to, be have one of those dinner invites where you'd go to a dinner and get a high pressure sales pitch to buy like an annuity or something. All right, let's get through this. I think this will be a good presentation and a lot of good information. Now, one of the things I always mention about this presentation is designed to give you an overview of retirement planning. I think it takes about a year to do retirement planning well. And what this is trying to do is try to touch on different pain points or topics for you to explore further, right? We can't do an entire retirement planning presentation in an hour. We have to really focus it on, here's an overview, here's other things to consider, here's some quick hitters, and then you should take it from there and kind of figure out where your path needs to go beyond that. My name is John Erickson. I've been running the Retirement Roadmap program for AAA for over 7 years now. I've been in the financial services industry more than 17 years. I run a practice here in Bellevue, Washington. So a lot of my information is going to be Washington State focused. Most of this is going to be generic enough it'll work anywhere, but most of my information is going to be Washington State focused. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about Social Security and income planning together. We always start with Social Security, kind of try and give a basic A to Z on that. And then we flip over and talk about income planning because they're really correlated. Then we're going to talk about investment and asset diversification, how it changes for retirees, at least some of the theory around that. Then we're talking about long-term care strategies. What are you going to do later in life when the fun is, less fun? And then if you want to ask questions after this presentation, feel free to email me, call me. I answer questions all the time for people just to kind of give further knowledge and get people down their path. Now, I am an independent financial advisor, so I'm not a AAA employee. So I do these presentations for AAA. I always mention that. My practice is in Bellevue. And when we do this presentation, I'm going to give you rules of thumb and as direct information as I can. But recognize that, everyone's situation could be different. And so we have to treat today's information as general in nature because, your situation could be actually materially different from the person to, your right or left you see from time to time. Now, we always start our presentations when we're talking about income planning, right? Income planning, I would say, is the bedrock of retirement. If I was to say the biggest issue I have with retirees is if you could tell me your budget, I could tell you what to do. Now, it's not totally fair because can you tell me when, your roof is going to leak or, your car's going to break down, you're going to have health issues, right? So it's not totally fair way to say it, but budgeting and income planning is really a huge component of retirement. And when we talk about income planning or retirement for the average American, I like to kind of set the stage of this is generally how we see most people go through their retirement planning. Everyone's a little different, but most people are going to start with their guaranteed income streams. And the reason this is in green is generally what you see is what you get. Your Social Security statement is generally accurate. There can always be maximization strategies or other things you might want to try, but it is pretty much guaranteed by the government. What you see is what you get. A lot of retirement planning is going to start to talk about your retirement accounts. Are you trying to maximize, your guaranteed income streams? Are you trying to use it to create other income? Are you trying to save it for future events? Is it just keeping, your emotional security in place in retirement, knowing you have this pool of money on the side, right? Are we trying to save it for future medical expenses? That's where a lot of the analysis in retirement is going to come from. And there's some new expenses you got to really think about when you're in retirement that you may not have really dealt with as much in your lifetime, right? Medical expenses are going to become an ever-increasing problem. You may have never had to pay for health insurance, directly before. You might have always gone through an employer, so you got to figure out how you're going to handle that. And then what's your plan for when you break down, right? Hopefully we all break down, right? We live long enough to do that. I always say the American dream sometimes is to live a long, great life and die in your sleep someday. Well, it doesn't always work out that way. So what's your plan for long-term care? Now, in our practice, and what we do when we do these presentations, we suggest you copy what we do in our practice. We think we do a decent enough job that if people copy this, they're going to be in a pretty good position. And what we're always trying to do is we're trying to create models. And we're trying to do two things. We're trying to help people emotionally and financially. And that's actually a really important component of financial planning and retirement planning is not just the math around the retirement, but also are you happy with your plan? And what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out the decision of, should I take Social Security at 65 versus 66? Well, that's two different models, and there's some trade-offs there. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out, can you survive today? How is this going to look 20 years in the future when inflation has doubled the price of everything? And also, are you happy with your plan, right? Because there's lots of different ways to do retirement planning. There's lots of different ways people have made it work. If you think about your personal finances during your working years, some people have cash on the side that they pull out of their wallet. Some people only pull out credit cards. Some people, have never balanced their checkbook, right? Or looked at their bank statements, which would be more relative today. Lots of different ways to handle finance, but are you comfortable with your plan? And when we do our planning, we always start with Social Security in our practice. And we actually ran into an interesting problem. When I first started my career, I always expected people would maximize their income streams and just really attack retirement and spend money like crazy. Not overspend, but spend their money up to what they can do. And what I found is that people go through retirement, and my clients have aged, even when they have significant money, they start to live on their defined income streams like Social Security. And then when you consider a portion of Americans don't have a lot of retirement savings, Social Security on their website will show that Social Security makes up at least 64% of household income. And Social Security solves a problem you have today. It's a basic problem in financial planning. You tell me how long you're going to live, I can tell you what to do. But most people cannot answer that question, thankfully. And because, you don't know how long you're going to live, you have this basic problem of not running out of money. And Social Security is going to solve that problem for you by making it so that that component, that income stream, is going to last as long as you live. And then when you die, it's going to stop. Now, there are some survivor's benefits and secondary things there, but that's generally the deal. And it's what we call a form of annuity or actuarial math. And the word annuity is a big friggin' word, and it can mean a lot of different things. And if someone came to me and said the word annuity, I wouldn't know what they are talking about day one. And I know a lot about annuities. And so, I would suggest to you that, when I use the term annuity there, it's a little slapstick, but it's really doing a very specific thing. It's paying you for the rest of your life. And then when you die, it stops. And when we look at the difference between a good Social Security election and a poor one, we can see that difference in between $30,000 and $100,000 over your lifetime. And that amount of money is an interesting number because it can work really two ways. If I hand you $50,000 as a check right now, you take that. But if I said, I'm going to give you $2,000 a year, every year for the rest of your life extra by making some certain Social Security decisions, you may not take that amount of money, right? $50,000 may actually not be a lot of money to you over your lifetime. And so when we talk about maximizing Social Security, making good Social Security decisions, when we talk about, somewhere between $30,000 and $100,000 extra benefit from Social Security, there are secondary factors you have to consider there. And one of the secondary factors is just your emotions and your behaviors around, your finances in your life. And I always tell people $50,000 is not a lot of money over your retirement when you consider everything. And if it's going to make you happy doing one Social Security decision over another, as long as you're doing the other things generally right, that's okay by me, right? Because $50,000 over 20, 25 years is actually not necessarily a lot of money. But I'm more the delay Social Security camp. I like people to delay and get bigger benefits because, what keeps me up at night is probably different than what keeps most people up at night. I'm worried about people running out of money. I'm worried about inflation over 20, 25 years. I have 100 plus people in my practice. I'm worried about someone who's going to come in my door 25 years from now. And did I do a good job? Did they run out of money? It's a very different risk than someone worrying about dying early because typically that's not my worry. Now, we always got to go some basic rules in Social Security. You can apply anywhere between age 62 and 70. For most people, survivor's benefits breaks those rules. Your first payment comes the month after you apply or you choose. So if your birthday's the middle of the month, you apply for that month. If for some reason it's delayed, they will backdate your payments. You can apply up to 4 months early. The benefit's based upon your full retirement age benefit or FRA. And that's based upon 35 years of earnings history. Okay. And that's an important calculation because your statement is assuming that you're going to keep working every year till full retirement age based upon your last year's income. And if you retire early, you actually might start inserting some zeros in there. If you have the full 35 years of earnings history, you're going to be in pretty good shape. It's not going to mess up your statement too much. But every zero you insert in is going to be a little bit more than 3% reduction on your benefit. And so you got to watch out for retiring early and how it can affect your statement in your planning. Okay. I always suggest people withhold taxes from their Social Security payments. Everyone's an individual and everyone can make their own financial decisions. But my problem is when I deal with lots of people who are in their 80s and 90s, it starts to get harder for them to keep up on their finances, their tax situation, et cetera. So I try to simplify things. And I think simplifying by withholding taxes is a good way to go for most people. Remember, when you sign up for Medicare Part B, they're going to deduct that from your Social Security payment. So if you see $1,000 on your statement, that's how much you're supposed to get a month. And then you withhold taxes and then you withhold Medicare Part B, it's going to be a lesser amount, like $800, $700, $800 a month now at that point. And we got to talk about break-even points when we talk about Social Security, right? It's a big, important concept for a lot of people. Now, my worry is not you breaking, my worry is almost never someone dying early. It's always living a long time, right? So break-even points, I'm like, well, why are you worried about dying early, right? But it is such a common concern that we got to talk about it. And so in general, if you can live to 78 years and 8 months, all delay strategies are generally going to work for you on Social Security. Okay. Because you're going to you're going to start to get the greater benefits for a longer period of time, and you'll have hit the break-even point. And if you actually do the math and you take your age and add 10.4 years, that's about how long you have to live once you make your decision. So let's say you make your decision at age 70. That's about how long you have to live to make your break-even point work. And, there's always this question of, should you take Social Security and save it? I don't like this plan. It's very problematic based upon your age and your income levels. There could be some reduction factors. It causes taxation for you. And when we talk about the tax efficiency of Social Security, I don't like breaking the tax efficiency later in life for what is frankly a very minor benefit early in life. And you typically can't save enough from the benefit not for everyone, but for most people to materially affect their retirement. So I don't like the idea of taking Social Security and saving it. But I do like the idea of you looking at rates of return on the rest of your money. Because one of the common strategies of Social Security is spend money now to delay Social Security. Well, when you spend money now, your money now is earning rates of return. So how are you going to make the rates of return work for you to make the decision be a true break-even point? And in my practice, I always say if you can earn at least 5% compound across all your money, you got to look at that money you have in savings, right? That money earning, well, hopefully now you have at a high yield savings account, but that money that's earning less than 5%, got to count into your equation. But if you can earn at least 5% compound across your money, I almost don't care what people take Social Security. I want you to make good decisions. But now the math is a very break-even point. Now, I'm in the delay camp. I always say there's investors and savers in retirement. Investors, typically beating 5% compound and them taking Social Security earlier to avoid spending their money. I get. Savers typically are a little bit more conservative, and I really like them to consider delaying because you have to hit these numbers over your lifetime to make the math work. And there were times you were not hitting these numbers with CDs. Now, when I look at the Social Security decision, I look at it a little differently than you do. On here, the life expectancies from the Social Security website, and it's basically justifying that the older you get, the longer you technically should live. And it really does justify the concept of, delaying Social Security for the average scenario, right? You individually are not the average scenario. You're an individual, but across the averages, we would suggest delaying is going to typically work out. But there's a problem also when you access Social Security. And there's a problem I see on here that's not the break-even point around age. It's not the break-even point around that 5% compound number I'm talking about. It's the break-even point around your taxes. So when you take Social Security, it creates income for you. And that income could be taxable. And for a lot of people, the taxes aren't that big a deal because you don't have a lot of other income sources. But some people, the taxes are a huge deal. I have people who have millions of dollars in retirement accounts, and they're getting $10,000 of tax subsidies right now because they retire early and they're getting the Affordable Care Act healthcare subsidies. You can take money out of what are called qualified capital gains tax-free if you're under certain income limits. You could do things called Roth conversions, which is paying taxes now on qualified accounts and then convert it to a Roth account where you basically don't pay taxes anymore on that account. You could do all those different strategies, but those strategies are harder if you've now accessed Social Security to take an income. Right. So when I look at this right here, I understand the life expectancy. I understand my break-even points. I'm also going to throw in taxes onto your mix. And that's the ramifications of your election, right? Passing away early versus living a long time. Your tax situation, your healthcare situation. Are you going for the healthcare subsidies? And what's your personal beliefs? Are you worried about dying early? Do you want to delay? Have you always gone, what? I'm going to retire at 67. I'm going to take Social Security. That's my plan. I'm going to make the rest of my money grow. I can make that work. That's fine. I think the math works actually just fine doing that, as long as you are setting the rest of the money up to grow appropriately and you have appropriate income strategies, right? So your personal beliefs really matter here. Now, we've been talking about one person so far, some basic rules. There's also some basic rules we need to talk about. We talk plan for two people. And when we talk about two people, we need to talk about spousal benefits and survivor's benefits. And I always use my mom as a story in this one. I wonder if she'll ever watch this video. I probably will owe her a dinner if she ever does. But my mom qualified for 2 Social Security records on top of her own. So that's 3 records. She was divorced twice and married for at least 10 years. So when she applied for Social Security, she had access to her own benefit or 1/2 of either of her ex-spouse's benefits, whichever was higher at that point. And no matter how much she wanted to, she couldn't actually reduce that other person's benefits. You might tell that I grew up in a tougher household growing up around this, but my mom and my dad don't get along, and no matter how much she would want it to, that spousal benefit does not affect the other spouse. Okay, so she had these benefits. She could get her own benefit or the 1/2 spousal benefit, whichever is greater. And Social Security has a thing called deeming rules. When you apply for Social Security, you deem for all benefits you're eligible for. It's how they got rid of a lot of the double dipping strategies. So when my mom applied for Social Security, she could get either her spousal benefit or her own benefit, whichever's higher. And once she made that choice, she was locked in. Now, if you aren't divorced, though, you have to wait for your spouse to file before you can get the spousal benefit. So you can't actually deem for the spousal benefit if your spouse doesn't file and you're currently married. Okay. And, classic problem I run into is two people are 67. One person wants to wait till 70 to get Social Security. The other one doesn't want to wait till 70 to get Social Security because they're going to get the spousal benefit, and they want to take it at age 67. And that's a really good age to take it at because you can't get delay credits, but you can get reduction credits on the spousal benefit. So there's a problem if you take it early, and there's a problem if you wait, right? There's like this sweet spot right in the middle. But you can't take the spousal benefit because your spouse hasn't filed for Social Security yet. So what happens is you file for your own benefit, you get whatever that amount is. Hopefully it's not a meager amount. And then when your spouse turns 70, you get the higher benefit. And it usually automatically bumps up because you can now deem for that a benefit. But you should always watch out for it, right? It is the government. They're not always perfect. But that's basic spousal rules. And this can be very powerful, especially for people who don't have a lot of traditional work history. Maybe there was a stay-at-home parent, or maybe you were running a business and one person was getting income and the other person was working their butt off, but they don't show up on the paperwork, right? Lots of reasons people might be getting the spousal benefit. Now, survivor's benefits is another area. I talk about my mom all the time, and I always tell her some days she's going to get to celebrate twice. And the reason she's going to get to celebrate twice is, she doesn't have to deal with my father anymore. They don't have to deal with each other coming to, their grandson's birthday parties and things of that nature. And she gets to have the higher of the two Social Security benefits, right? She gets to basically inherit my father's benefit. And survivor's benefits is a planning issue for most couples, actually, because when you get older, like in your 80s, your expenses start to get dominated by fixed things: rent, property taxes. Food is actually lesser of an expense for people. Insurance, cable bills, things you can't just get rid of, expenses you can't just get rid of because someone passed away. And when someone dies and Social Security goes away, because remember, that's how it works, you might have an income problem. But the good news is that you get to keep the higher of the two numbers, okay? And depending upon the age you take it, and we're going to really just concentrate on full retirement age people or older here, you get to inherit a higher number potentially because someone might have delayed their Social Security. And there's a statistical problem that when you have two people and one pool of money, right? If you're a couple and you're retiring on your assets, you have one pool, retirement pool, but you're a couple, two people drawing from it, you have double the odds that someone's going to live a long time and double the odds someone's going to pass away early, right? And when we talk about spousal benefits, there's double the odds someone's going to live a really long time. So you typically want to delay one of the two benefits so that you protect whoever remains from those fixed costs that occur later in life. And you probably get more money out of the system because you delayed one benefit for someone who lives a really long time. On the other side of the equation, you usually want to start one benefit a little earlier because it will protect you in case someone passes away early. Now, what to do prior to choosing an election? Go to SSA.gov, create a login. I'm using my mom as an example. She's done this herself, and if she touches a computer, it catches on fire. So she did a great job going and doing this, and if she can do it, most people can do it. They do quiz you on your credit history to let you in, and if you can't get in because you have a credit lock or a problem that many of us have, you have to make an appointment at Social Security office and head in. But get in, actually see what you're going to make in Social Security. For 55, go see what you're going to make someday. It's a good idea to know what you're going to make on Social Security someday. Check your benefits, review your other assets, start to look at options. I say this is a year-long process, and consider meeting with a planner. You don't have to necessarily hire someone to manage all your assets. Sometimes you can just hire someone to do a financial plan for you, or you can use a free service you have for their work. But get a second set of eyes on this. Have someone challenge your assumptions one time. You can tell them they're wrong. It's okay. And then kind of figure out your math there. And I think that gives you a generally well-rounded concept around Social Security. Now, we didn't talk about every concept about Social Security. We didn't talk about government pensions, like government pension offset or windfall elimination provision for those people that matters to. We didn't talk about all the survivors' benefits rules, things of that nature. But this is a good basic overview of what you need to think about when you think about Social Security. Now, when we talk about Social Security, that's really income planning, right? Behind the scenes, what we're really doing when we're talking about Social Security is we're trying to create an income plan for someone. And when we talk about income planning, I would say this is actually one of the basic problems we have in retirement planning of, if someone could tell us what their budget is, like every time, we could do a lot of really great retirement planning. But that's actually one of the biggest problems we run into. And so, when we do income planning for retirees, we're really trying to look at it from two basic sides. How do we replace your paycheck, or how much money can you live on, right? Because that's one way to do retirement planning. Or what is your budget and can we hit it, right? But it's this basic concept of how do we replace your paycheck? And recognize when we do this, you're not 100 years of market history. Recency bias actually does matter to retirees a little bit more because you have a life expectancy. He's telling you, but you probably are going to pass away someday, right? And I always feel terrible talking about death so much in my practice, but it's an important concept for retirees. And that means that you're your own segment of market history. And there's been a lot of challenges around the interest rate environment. So I want to talk a little about that in income planning. Then I want to talk about how Social Security relates to this. We're going to talk about the 4% rule and how much you can withdraw from your investments. And then we're going to talk about the complicated talk of annuities. And we're going to have 3 slides on this. It's not designed to be a sales pitch. It's designed to be, here's what I think, the good, the bad, the ugly. This is what I'd want you to know if you're a retiree and looking at these. And when we're talking about income planning for retirees, right, outside of a budget or understanding how much income you can have, there's really 3 real big concepts we have to worry about when we talk about income planning. Tell me when you're going to die. Tell me what inflation is going to be looking like. Tell me what market history is going to be looking like. And I can tell you exactly what to do. A computer can, in fact. But the problem is when we talk about income planning, it's really a lifetime process of review. And you do this naturally, right? You do this naturally with your budget probably right now. But a lot of the decisions we make in retirement is because we don't know what these are exactly. We're trying to protect from all these different weird scenarios that your income plan actually may be a little stunted or more stunted than you expected because we don't know when you're going to die. We don't know what inflation is going to look like. We don't know what market conditions are going to look like. We know what averages can be, but we don't know your own 10-year or 20 or 30-year segment of history that those averages are going to affect. And one of the issues I run into when I talk about income planning is the concept of fixed income or bonds or things of that nature. And when I look at CD rates right now, I really like these as part of an income plan. I really like them as part of a protection play, but they're not foolproof, right? And that's why I can't just recommend them flat out here. And when we talk about this old concept of laddering CDs, there's actually a problem here that you have to figure out. And this is the inflation problem, right? If you look at historical long-term inflation, it's around 2 to 3%. But if you look at recency bias, when I create this video, it's around between 4 and 6%, depending upon exactly when you're looking at this. And that recency bias really matters because, when we look at the interest rates right now and we look at 5.5% on 1-year CD, that looks pretty good. But when I know you're going to lose 4% to inflation and you take an extra amount out, like say 4%, you're going to start losing about 3.5% purchasing power, i.e. that receipt, that statement you get at the store every time you go to the grocery store, we call a receipt, it's showing you're losing 3.5% purchasing power. And so if you're doing things like laddering CDs and that's your only plan, there's a problem. If you're living on fixed income and that's your only plan, there's a problem because of inflation, right? And we don't know exactly how it's going to look, but it's a problem you have to consider. And so when we talk about replacing your paycheck in retirement, you're really trying, if we're trying the highest level possible, you're really trying to identify how much is fixed and how much is variable, and do you have a plan to deal with inflation? And do you have a plan that lets you sleep at night, right? This is 2 big numbers. And what I'm always trying to do is I'm trying to figure out at the highest level, what does that look like for someone before you fill it with anything, any products, any investments, whatever you're trying to do. How does this look and how is this person going to function and feel in their retirement, right? If you could do that and go, well, this is how this is going to look, you could do a lot of successful income planning because you'll have now plans when the market goes down. You'll have plans when inflation hits you, right? Because you've done the basic high level math of fixed income versus variable income. And when we talk about inflation and what it makes us do, when we talk about life expectancy, what it makes us do, when we talk about rates of return, what it makes it do, we need to talk about the 4% rule. I love the 4% rule, but there's some problems with it. I think the 4% rule is a great basis for retirement planning, but it's not foolproof. And so what the 4% rule is, it actually annoys me, is let's take $500,000, multiply by 4%. That's $20,000 annually a year. Sometimes people are like, only annually? What? That's how much you can technically have if you're going to use the 4% rule, which is designed to protect you from inflation, life expectancy, and market rates of return. And the 4% rule, it has a basic 2% inflation factor behind the scenes, right? Which is probably a little low, but when you consider life expectancy, it's not actually crazy. And then you have to go out there and you have to make the 4% rule work with rates of return. And the problem is when you say the 5% rate of return right down there, which is a good number, Even 6% is you look at your history of the last 10 to 20 years, your recency bias, you're probably beating that number. The math doesn't work if you don't also pay attention to the inflation rate. And so if you were to go buy CDs right now, well, I see the 4% rule says I can earn 5%. I can take a 4% withdrawal rate and have a 2% inflation rate, and the math should work. It mostly works, but you actually need to potentially increase your rate of return 2% or decrease your withdrawal rate due to inflation, or take advantage of the fact you're not going to live forever and life expectancy is a factor in retirement planning. But this is, I love the 4% rule, but this is one of the problems with buying CDs or laddering those types of products is that you kind of need to be a little older before you jump into that. You probably need to take more market risk up front. And when you take market risk, there's problems with that. So we talked about the problem with inflation, right? Let's talk about the problem with market risk. I'm saying you should consider this, but I'm not exactly telling the problem. And, I have lots of retiree clients who go, I cannot handle seeing my accounts go up or down, right? And half of my job is to go, okay, I know you can't handle this, but I got to worry about inflation. How am I going to make it so you can handle something? How am I going to make this math work here? And they're actually smart to be worrying about this because I get to do something called dollar cost averaging right now. When market downturns occur, they're great for me personally, not for my business, but great for me personally because I get to take small amounts of money, invest it in the market when the market's down, and I get dollar cost averaging. But retirees have the exact opposite problem. They have reverse dollar cost averaging because when the market goes down, it typically takes greater successive markets to fix the problem. And if you're taking income out at the exact same time, you're now locking in losses that you need even greater successive returns to fix. And when we do this math you see on the screen right here, right now, over someone's retirement via Monte Carlo scenarios, things of that nature, we start to run into wildly different problems. And we call this sequence of returns risk. And there's lots of concepts, articles on this. And I think this math right here is really fundamental to most retirement planning. I think a lot of financial advisors don't really get this math. And it's why we have all sorts of different financial products. We have balance funds, target date funds, why we talk about non-correlating assets, why we talk about putting money in CDs, having a plan for when the market goes down. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. When we talk about the efficient frontier, there's this problem we have when you take money out of someone's account and you have different market returns called sequence of returns risk. And so let's go over it. Let's understand how you could protect yourself from this. And let's talk about what people like me are trying to do for you or to you, depending upon your situation, to try to fix this. So you're a spreadsheet person. I love spreadsheet people. And you take $100,000 and you take the 4% rule out, you grow it based upon inflation, and by age 90, you have $6,500. And then you look at retirement accounts. And if you have recency bias, which a lot of us will, you're going to see you've dominated 6% rates of return over the long term. And even though it's been really annoying at times, you've dominated this number. So you do this on your spreadsheet, you take $100,000, you grow it at 6%, you take out your withdrawals, and you see by age 90, you have roughly $141,000 depending upon your timing of your withdrawals. And you're like, cool, retirement's done, easy, right? But to hit a 6% rate of return, you typically need to take some level of market risk. CDs aren't, even when I'm doing this video right now, CDs aren't quite there. And that's just a 6% rate of return, which if we have greater than normal inflation, you actually need to have something that can expand to a higher rate of return to protect you, potentially. And when we start to take some levels of market risk, we start to have different results averaging the exact same 6%. So 6% negative and 6% positive. If you add up behind the scenes the rates of returns and divide by 25, you're going to average 6%. Every one of these people gets to hold up their statement in 25 years that I average 6%. But you're going to have wildly different results based upon market timing. And it makes sense, right? If the market crashes right when you retire and you spend a whole bunch of money, you're going to spend so much of your base that you can't recover. And when we talk about the 4% rule or Monte Carlo scenarios, where you look at thousands of scenarios trying to model this, you'll see the 4% rule worked even in down market scenarios. I have a 2008 style financial crash year at age 70 for this person. And it's suggesting that by age 90, which is mortality for 75% of us, they still have $48,000 in the bank. May not be fun to see their balance down like that. They may not be ready for long-term care expenses, but the 4% rule worked. But it's such a wildly different result than the positive column or the fixed column that we got to address this and go, well, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with market downturns of retirement while trying to hit rates of return because you got to beat inflation, while managing life expectancy? How do you manage all this together, right? And you have the sequence of returns risk. And so this is where things like non-correlating assets come into play, right? If you want the most basic way to do this, do you have a little bit of money in the bank so when the market goes down, you don't have to touch your money? and then, let it recover for 2 to 4 years. That's probably the most basic way most people handle this, right? A lot of people handle this, but they're just not spending their money. When the market's down in retirement, they don't go on vacations. I don't like that one, but a lot of people do it, right? It's all about how do you protect yourself when the market goes down. And in the industry, we do this a lot of different ways, right? There's lots of good ways to do this in retirement planning. Target date funds are trying to do this, or trying to hit a rate of return and lower your ups or downs or volatility. Balanced funds are trying to do this. Non-correlating assets or asset allocation models are trying to do this. You might add CDs to your portfolio or annuities to do this. There's lots of ways that we're all trying to fix this problem right here on the screen, right? And if you could do this for yourself in retirement, that's a really good way to consider looking at your income plan. And that brings us to the topic of annuities, because it's actually a very old retirement concept. It's actually, annuities predate the 4% rule. But because they typically work as a non-correlating asset and they've been around forever as part of retirement planning, they're a good way to, at least look at for your retirement. Now, for me, with annuities, I have a love-hate relationship. I love them as a tool. I hate how they're sold. I don't think they're for everyone. In fact, it's like that really trusty tool that only works every once in a while because you only need it every once in a while. That's the problem with annuities, basically, is it could be, I would say it's a trusty tool that you only need to use every once in a while. But there is a secondary component to annuities, and it's the behavioral finance component, right? Where sometimes you just want strict guarantees in retirement, and that's your sleep at night component. And that's actually important for a lot of people. And because insurance companies can make certain guarantees, that is an important component to consider. So let's do 3 basic slides on annuities and kind of give you the good, the bad, the ugly, and then push on from there. So if I was to, at the highest level, say, what are annuities good for? And, it's a very generic statement. I would say they're an income play or they're a protection play. And in fact, when I design retirement plans, I have a 3-bucket system: income, growth, or protection. And I only really like annuities for 2 of the buckets, protection or income. And if you could really focus on annuities as either an income play, i.e. like a pension, or a protection play like a CD, I think you understand them pretty well. There's some other nuances there you have to consider, but that's a pretty good basics right there. And if you look at what's called an immediate annuity, and this is probably the oldest style I'm aware of, where you are going to take a chunk of money and give it to an insurance company in exchange for a guaranteed lifetime income stream. And you are now going to forego market risk. And if you compare it to the 4% rule, there's some benefits and some negatives here, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. The good is you're going to typically have more income because you have to worry about inflation, outliving your money, market returns. But an insurance company gets to do this over thousands of people. They have a lot less worries than you do as an individual on your money. So they typically can give you better income. And it's guaranteed. That's both pretty good. The bad is you have to give up access to your $100,000 most of the time. There are ways to keep access to your $100,000, but whenever you add features, you take away from your core benefits. So if I go back to that original thing, you're either trying to protect or you're trying to create income. Whenever you add features, you're going to reduce some benefits somewhere. And so you've now given up typically access to your money, or you're getting way less growth. The money's typically not there for your heirs. So if you compare it to the 4% rule, you both have access. You might appreciate your money, beat market risk, and it's probably going to be there for your heirs. Annuity's not necessarily going to do that. So if you go back to what I said, income versus, growth vehicle, this isn't a growth vehicle. It's an income vehicle. And it works for a lot of people, and it does give you that sleep at night factor. You have this guaranteed income stream. I really respect that component of this. But on the other side of the equation, you may not sleep at night because you have to give up access to your money, right? So there's 2 ways behavioral finance could work on that. I've been both sides of the conversation. The other thing I'll mention, because I'm in Washington State, is a lot of Washington State employees, public employees, have access to what's called the TAP annuity or purchasing service credit, which works very similar to what you're seeing on the screen right here. I've looked at it a lot. I think it's pretty good. Doesn't mean you should do it, but you should really consider it and dive into those numbers as part of your retirement plan. If you ever have questions on it, I help people all the time maximize it. It's not for everyone, but it's something you should consider. And the math works a lot like what you're seeing on the screen right now, but typically with better factors. Now, the other side of the equation is you can use annuities as protection. And when you use annuities as protection, there's really a core feature you got to watch out for. So when I'm trying to protect money, I'm trying to protect it from market risk typically, and have access to it when I need it, right? Which is when the market goes down. And that means you want your annuity to be able to get access to the money. And so if you have a 5-year annuity, at first you're like, well, crap, I can't actually get my money for 5 years. And I don't want to ladder, $10,000 here or there. That's brutal. But if you have a 10% withdrawal feature, which is what you should be looking for, or a good withdrawal percentage, and you multiply it by your deposit amount, that's your access per year. And that's actually not terrible because If you compare it to CDs, you have to break CDs to access the money. This, you don't have to break it. You actually just have this access feature. And I think that's materially pretty solid. And you can also get a good interest rate that's tax deferred now. And remember my conversation about Social Security, tax deferral matters for retirees because of all the other things you have to worry about. Property tax forgiveness, healthcare subsidies, trying to attack your tax brackets, things of that nature. So this is not a terrible play, but this is a protection play. It's not designed to be a massive growth vehicle. It's designed to not correlate with the market, basically. Now, I also put on something on here. It's kind of a trap, an S&P 500 cap. And the reason it's a trap, I say, is when you see a number like that, go research it and find out what the heck this is. Because, one of the problems with annuities is they can promise big numbers or big percentages and you don't really have a well-rounded understanding of how that works. And when I look at an S&P 500 cap, something like this is something where I really need to trust who my client is before I offer something like this. So I always tell people you should research this, or you should have really trust in people that you're working with if we're going to talk the annuity route, because I always say if you're going to trust someone, they should be willing to tell you no, is how I would say it. Because there's lots of decent reasons that it's a good tool in the toolbox, but they can be very complicated vehicles. The one to watch out for is income riders. That's not because they're necessarily bad. It's because whenever you see an income rider attached to a contract, it typically is a higher commission paying contract, so you have a greater conflict of interest. Once again, not guaranteed that way, but something to watch out for. Income riders are a calculation to typically guarantee you lifetime income. There's lots of flavors of these, but typically they guarantee you lifetime income at a certain point in your life. And if you remember what I said earlier about annuities, if you want it for income, pretty good deal. Not perfect, but pretty good. But also try to do other things like have a death benefit, give you access to your money if you need it, to be very flexible. And with flexibility comes fees. It comes potentially stunted growth. And so remember, when you have flexibility, this is why you have to watch out for it. You might be hurting your core benefit. So they're a tool, they work, but it's something to watch out for because it has the greater conflict of interest. That's why I said I hate how annuities are sold sometimes, but I don't mind the solutions. But overall, regardless of the 3 annuity slides or everything we talked about, we really suggest you have a blended approach. We are trying to fix the problem that things that are stable or don't have market risk tend to lose to inflation and may not be liquid. A CD is actually not liquid. You have to break it and lose interest unless you've layered it appropriately to get at it. And we want to blend this with things that might now have some ups or downs, might cause some stress, but it's going to make me stress a lot less because I've protected someone from inflation probably, right? So you got to watch out for that inflation play. And that's what we're really trying to do. So we don't like pure laddering strategies. We use laddering as part of a 3-bucket system. We like to blend all these things together while at the same time making you can sleep at night, while at the same time making the math can work. Well, I hope this segment was a helpful presentation for you. We have all 3 segments, so you'll notice that there's a video for each of these. So if you watch, say, the long-term care video and you're like, what was they talking about income planning? You should probably go watch the income planning video first. Same with the investment asset diversification. But I hope that, as you went through the videos, you got something of value. The goal here is to spread information and spread as much of value as possible. If you ever have questions, I'm based in Bellevue, Washington. I'm always happy to work with people who would like to have a personal financial planner. It's not for everyone, but you're welcome to check out my website, look at my fee schedules, contact me with basic questions. I love talking to people, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have down the road. Thank you for watching the presentation today.